Hello, I'm Kelly Tomblin, President and CEO of El Paso Electric. We are the utility that serves a little portion of Texas, New Mexico. We sit on the border of Mexico and New Mexico, so we're kind of in a spot all into ourselves. We serve 450,000 customers, about 1 million people through using nuclear, solar, and gas-fired power generation. We become famous in February when we were the one utility in Texas that stayed in power, primarily because of that fuel diversity. We were excited to be highlighted on the national scene for that, and it really was the result of learning from a prior freeze and really creating a situation where we had dual fuel. A lot of discussion was around the fact we weren't in ERCOT, but really we stayed in power because we had dual fuel and we could run on diesel. What I saw from that, and having worked in this industry for 30 years in various markets and with various regulatory structures, that it is a lot of fun to own your generation. We could go out there and really have discussions with our team about, what filter to change and how to bring it on. So we're really excited about that. I'm hoping you're noticing from this that we are remote. I worked for many years in the Caribbean. I was the CEO and president of Jamaica Public Service, and it really reminds me of that we are a segment of the world all to ourselves, and we really are in it together. And that brings really us up to why we have named this about resilient connections. And for us, it is both the physical infrastructure and also this other connection to our community, our purpose, and to the future. So we talk about that a lot at El Paso Electric, that we have to have deep community connections and deep industry connections to really navigate this next phase. I have never seen in our country alignment around the vision. And while there are some naysayers, people who say the climate change isn't real, for the most part, the utility group, EEI, and those of us who serve in the utility space are agreeing on a couple of key facts. Climate change is real. Technology is changing everything, that our industry participants are going to continue to grow, that technology for the first time really has been taken seriously, and that storage will be a key to our future. So having agreed upon all of that, what we've also agreed on is that the utilities won't be able to do that alone, and certainly not here. And for us, that's brought up a communication around shared values. And so what does that mean? I think you've heard me say that our industry has all the cool words. We have light, energy, power, connection. And what that means for us is that we have to get really skilled in how we build those connections. I'll give you some examples. Today, we will be doing a ribbon cutting with New Mexico State University, one of our universities, where we are doing a joint project around solar and storage that those students will benefit from, and we will benefit from the research around that. We will do another ceremony recently with UTEP, which is the University of Texas at El Paso, a 4-point plan to really involve research and a building of human capital and their curriculum. We're signing a JDA with Mitsubishi to look at hydrogen and see how we can convert our power plants to run on that. So what we do know, that if we are going to really create the economic prosperity that we want for our region, the economic development, and if we are going to balance clean energy with reliability and affordability, we are going to have to build different infrastructure connections. But the real thing that we're focused on right now is building connections with everyone that has a voice in that process. I just left what is my customer advisory group, who really represents so many of our customers that help us navigate the language around that and help us navigate what's important to our customers. What I do know is that those of us who join this industry tend to stay there, and it sometimes skews how we communicate what our vision is and what we care about. So in addition to talking about shared values, something that perhaps a utility isn't skilled in with our community, we have to make sure that it's aligned with our corporate mandate. At EPE, we have a program called Safety in the 5 Cs, and the 5 Cs are climate, culture, community, things that you would expect us to talk about, and customer and cyber. And we do all of our work against that lens and our mandate of ESG. Certainly that we've given lip service to it in the past, but today it is a corporate mandate. And we're focused on different skills that help build connections, those around storytelling. I had a group in yesterday talking to us about how to build that skill in our company, because I don't think we can do externally what we can't do internally. If you cannot build the sense of connection and the commitment to environment and social equity inside your company, you're not going to be able to build that externally. So I think the bottom line to building resilient connections first is having the goal and the intentionality to recognize that we are entering into a new chapter of energy, that it requires us, and maybe has always required us, to think differently about who really participates in that market. What are the partnerships between supply and demand? What are the partnerships with people who can actually do objective research? How do we build our human capital? How do we get excitement around this next phase? And how do we make sure it happens? Despite some of our, arguments about the path forward, we recently announced our carbon neutral goal of 80% by 2035 and 100% by 2045. And it's like when John F. Kennedy said we're going to the moon, we know a lot of the pathway, but that final, 5%, have we mapped it out appropriately? No, but we know that we have good minds to bring to bear on that. And it might not be everyone sitting in El Paso Electric. So for us, building resilient connections will require new skills. It will require a different way of looking at the world, and we're really excited about that. So with that, I'll ask Jason to come on in, and let's do our Q&A around the prologue to building resilient connections.
All right, Kelly, that was wonderful. That was wonderful. Yeah, lots of ideas pop into mind, but one you had mentioned, for those out there that I found particularly interesting, is see if you could talk a little bit about the parallels of your previous role in Jamaica and now working there in El Paso. And I'd just love for you to share some of that with our audience.
Sure. I grew up in the First Energy group of companies, which is a large utility. I left there and went to GDF Suez, which is now ENGIE, or ENGIE if you're in the US, but another huge company and one or two largest energy companies in the world. And when I left those kind of environments, among others, and went to the Caribbean, it really was an environment that really depended upon itself. Definitely, if you go out of lights in Jamaica, nobody's coming. There's no connection. There's no international grid anywhere else other than Jamaica. And although JPS was owned by a Japanese company, Marubeni, and a South Korean company, KEPCO, it was housed by 1,700 Jamaicans. So the parallels are these: a real concern for green energy, number one. Just like our mayor says here, we have 400 days of sunshine a year. And while I try to point out, that not really 400, we are called the Sun City. There is sun, and our public sees the sun and wants to know why we're not taking advantage of it. At Jamaica and in the Caribbean, where I sit on the utility board, there was the same call to action around renewables. The Minister of Energy would say the same things. We've got wind in Jamaica. We've got sun in Jamaica. Why don't we have all renewables? And that requires a conversation. So number one, a deep dependency on yourself. Number two, a great concern for taking advantage of what the customers could see in renewable resources. But the third is a concern for social issues, the equity in Jamaica. Much like here, we have really, really wealthy that were really apparent, and really, really a sense of poverty, which is also apparent. And here, just like there, this utility tends to be a really important company. And big markets, while we're important, we're not that important, but definitely a lot. We're called into a lot of conversations that we normally wouldn't be involved in around economic development, around social equality. So I think it's that. And I do think here the culture is similar, a big family culture, a big cultural adherence to different things. And so it's it's culture, it's independence, it's renewable care, but really this idea of social equity and how do we really pursue abundance for our population. And really, that's not a conversation a lot of utilities have. How do we pursue abundance? That's not really in our corporate languaging, but it is here and it was in Jamaica.
Mm-hmm. And you had mentioned early on, and maybe it was in our previous conversation, just that community centricity that was there, and you've been able to cultivate that. And you've mentioned there's an 85% vaccination rate amongst El Paso Electric, and that has really led you guys to continue to lead in the community and get the work done. What were some of those leadership lessons you used to help
Sure.
help accomplish that?
I'm really proud of it. As far as I can tell, we're the most vaccinated utility in the country. We're around 85% vaccinated. And so many people ask me, how did you get that done? Did you mandate it? Did you offer incentive? No, I got to say, there's just two things that happen there. There's a deep commitment, and I'm sure there is everywhere, but deep commitment to service among cells. I mean, our team too had a concern about the vaccines, but they also knew that we have a population that's really family centric. Multi-generations are here. They talk about creating an environment where the kids can stay. And there was a deep commitment to doing what we could, while we understood perhaps some of the risk there, that we all got vaccinated as soon as possible. So not only could we take care of energy needs when people were working at home, we couldn't afford to quarantine everybody all the time. And people just really rose to the occasion there. And I think that came on the back of some tragedies for El Paso. We had the shooting at Walmart. We had the early COVID situation where the national news was showing morgues and people in the street. I mean, it was painful. So I think that we came together because, first of all, I mentioned again that we are a community, sometimes in and of ourselves, the New Mexico, the Texas, and the Juarez. You can't tell where Juarez starts and El Paso ends. So I think we came together because we knew we had to. And that's really resulted in a benefit to our customers, because I'm not quarantining people. I'm not having to try to find a contractor to fill in. So it has benefited our customers, and I know they appreciate that. So it's been, I don't want to say exciting time, but it has been a healing time for us.
And you go back to the leadership. Well, you told me a story a little bit. I think it was a day or two ago in talking about ETS of when Wolf Blitzer was asking to interview guys about the storm, but it was really telling about leadership, and it really speaks to probably why a lot of the great positive attention has come to your area. I would love for you just to share a little bit about that.
We've talked about leadership a lot, and I know I put together a little couple of manuscripts about doing power differently. I love the play on words there, and about think, love, leadership. One of the leadership lessons that we've really honed in on is this idea of eliminating hierarchy. This leaders eat last, but this idea that probably if I'd gone out and said, let's all get vaccinated, that might have had an impact. But what we saw is that when we move out of the way, sometimes other people will step up and take that lead. So I think that's a leadership role that we've learned. We've learned that you got to distribute the voice. And in our culture and in our company, in our industry, we're so already have embedded hierarchy. So when it came time that Wolf Blitzer and CNN wanted to cover El Paso Electric, I said, I'm not speaking. I didn't do anything. And you're not speaking, communications people. What we did was let our plant manager, and I want you to picture our plant manager. Our plant manager was somebody who was an intern here, first college generation, and he was going to be on Wolf Blitzer and on CNN. And there was the other guy who was our vice president of operations was going to join him, but both of them just happened to go to a school called Irvin High School. And the joke they both said to me was, wow, we never thought somebody from Irvin High School would be on CNN unless it was crime related. But, joking aside, it was, the leadership lesson is give the microphone to the person who is best suited to speak, and remind yourself that sometimes when you highlight it, people are never the same again. That power plant will never be the same again, because they got to take ownership for something that they did very well. So I think that's number two. And you said it earlier, stories, the story is what changes the world. And I think we have to continue to remind ourselves that, let people tell their story, teach them how to tell their story, and ask them to tell our story. Definitely our industry has been criticized for not telling its story very well. And I think that's another leadership lesson that we've been learning in spades, that listen, we have to tell our story, and we have to let other people tell that. And I do think the lessons we know about leadership, about appreciation, and the shallowness of that sometimes we can give about that. And again, this change, people only change from love or fear. And I think what we're trying to do is really hone in on the love part and eradicate the fear part.
The love your light song that we're big fans of. I think we told you about that 3 or 4 times. So
I love that song.
That shines through.
Yeah.
That shines through for sure. So I think that leads us to today in this. You've seen the transition. You've seen lots of change in this industry, and you also mentioned that people tend to stay, and I think that's completely great. But why? One thing I'm asking a lot of leaders: why is this time different? What feels different about this moment outside the COVID context, or maybe you can't separate the two? What's different about this time that you see like this is a big moment for us together to move forward?
Number one, I mentioned it earlier, alignment in the industry. I have never seen EEI, which is the compilation of other CEOs, be so aligned that we have a climate issue, we have a social equity issue, and we've gotten into places we'd never get in before. That's number one. Number two, the leadership language has been changing over time, and that takes a long time. The Simon Sinek's, the Brené Browns, they're in our corporate rooms right now. And I think that's changed. The third thing is corporate mandate. I was on the phone with our rating agencies, and they are looking at ESG. They're looking at our diversity. They're looking at our DEI. They're looking at our carbon footprint, and we have to answer to that. A shareholder mandate. I'm going to Spain to talk to our shareholders from our investment infrastructure fund. We were acquired last year by a private group, and my first question wasn't if I'm going to meet the environmental mandate. It was, how am I going to meet it? And that was for my shareholders. But I think the other thing that is really running in the water that I'm so excited about is the change around how we really get things done and the role of leaders. I mean, this is an emotional business, and we have focused on the intellect so much. And we are talking about combining our knowledge with our knowingness, combining our minds with our hearts, and being able to say those words in the boardroom, say the word love in a boardroom. The corporate language is necessarily changing. So I think COVID helped, with the rawness of that we had to have messy conversations, and we had to get better at all the, social skills that we've talked about for a decade. Technology, we know that's changing, but let's face it, Jason, we were talking about storage in 1995, and we were buying a company on storage. We were going to Costa Rica to do it. So we know that if our country said tomorrow, we will have cheap storage, long range storage, it would happen. So I think the intentionality is changing too. And then the corporate participants, I asked my team yesterday, and this may be heresy, but I said, if whatever you think of Elon Musk, or fill in your blank out, we were just doing that because, of the whole SpaceX thing that day. And I said, if Elon Musk ran our industry, do you think we'd still be using poles and wires to distribute energy? So the industry participants are changing, and Amazon and Facebook and people who are coming to our communities are demanding something different from us. And if we don't give it to them, they're going to give it to themselves. So I think all of that, the alignment, new technology, the new participants, and it's been happening, but now you have a crescendo of all those things coming together, and the human impact, the human change of our people saying, not doing that. It is definitely, I just think, a moment where the technology has come together with the change of the human mindset.
Wow, you must have been reading virtual Zoom, because as you're talking, a comment that was made earlier by Brian Savoy, an executive for Duke Energy, he was asked, what's the biggest barrier to meeting clean energy goals? And his answer was changing mindsets. It wasn't and you hit right on there. So maybe just give us some tidbits that we can take away to help us change mindsets.
We've always thought, and I've probably said it, that we have to balance reliability, affordability, and clean energy. And we've always thought those three can't live in the same environment, right? And so I think just changing the mindset that it is a mandate. I mean, it is the time, whatever science you want to believe, and that we can do it. And so I think this idea, the art of the possible, has got overused, but I think that we have been on the same road for so long that's hard to get on another road. So I think changing mindset always comes from that. But I do think that changing how we hire too, Jason, we are having some retirements here, and I know a lot of utilities are facing that. And I think who we put in those roles is going to be really interesting. When I was put in a role, I think from going from a lawyer, and they asked me to go run a T&D part of the business, I was like, oh, I don't know anything about that. And they were like, precisely. That's why we want you to do it, because we want someone with a fresh perspective. And that was a really risk for the company. So I think that's a tidbit is, think more boldly and people you put in spots. In my last job, I put a 28-year-old in as my CFO, and everyone thought, we were going to come crash into the ground. And we did so well and so much better. So that's an example. Let's be bold and remember, diversity does require, the DEI does require us to have a variety of people. And Jason, you and I talk about, it's always about the people. So the first mindset we have to change is who is the right person for particular roles. It's always the who before the what. So I think that's our mindset. But the mindset about this, I think about this session we're having is, how do shared values, let's have a conversation about our community shared values. What are we trying to do together? Again, I am so excited to have Dan Arvizu at New Mexico, Heather Wilson, former Secretary of the Army, a Congresswoman leading UTEP, who is in deep partnership with us that can do research we can't do. It's okay. It's okay to let other people give you information that you can't derive yourself. So I think it's all that. Number one, art of the possible. Focus on the people, always about the people. Be bold in your hiring. Be bold in your vision. Be able to articulate it and continue to practice your storytelling. I think that's the idea. And you and I we had another fun session several years ago about, making utility fun again.
Yeah.
Nothing happens without a little passion, excitement, some fun around it. Humans crave it. Let's get excited. So I think, the mindset of excitement and passion around what we're doing, I think that will propel us forward more than any strategic plan that we can come up with.
Yeah, completely agree. And I have to ask, just like, so who, especially being a female, right, and being a pioneer in a lot of respects, and who impacted you early that maybe sparked something, or maybe you were just born with it?
No, you remember my dad was a coal miner. My dad recently passed, was a coal miner, didn't graduate from high school. I didn't know a person that went to college other than my teachers and perhaps a doctor that I had seen. So definitely I didn't grow up with that vision. But you know what, I think along the way I was taught it through my earliest institution, a Southern Baptist church, was to raise my hand and say, put me in, coach, or here I am, Lord, or whatever your background is. So I think I was taught that, but along the way, there were people who really took risk on me. And in particular, Bruce Levy was a head of an organization in New York. And he told me that he wanted me to help him because I could pass for Texan. We're going to mess up. But he was kidding. I hope. No, I don't think he's kidding. But, he really took a lot of risk on me. And I think the other game changer for us at our company, we started DEI in 1993. And if you look at the industry now, look at Patty Pope, Maria Pope, look at the Western CEOs, look around. I think I was able along the way to see other women because our industry really, I think earlier than most, started talking about the need for diversity. but certainly those people who took risk on me, Doug Howe, who now is sitting in New Mexico, early on took risk on me, Mike Chesser. But the reason I'm putting that out, they're a bunch of white men, but they took a lot of risk on me, and I've benefited from it, and it's made me comfortable taking risk on others. But I just think that I'm inspired by the other women in our industry and watching how they're digging into just the whole emotion around where we are now, and the wholeness of mind, body, and spirit at work. And that really is exciting for me to see in this industry.
Yeah, Kelly, we touched on a lot, and unfortunately that the time has run out on us. I think we could have kept going, but your message on this connections across internal, external are highly relevant. We know we have the smartest people working on this, right? And your message that we need to bring more folks in there are key. And we just really appreciate you coming in here and giving us those recommendations that we can take back and bring into our workplace. We're big fans, as you know, and we will be in person next year. And we will hope maybe there's a new dance out there that we can share, and we can put that one on TikTok and do all the fun stuff. But again, thank you so much for your leadership, and thank you so much for being here with us at ETS 21.
Jason, I'm always happy to be at ETS. I love the name, this whole having a new thought about energy. You were early pioneers in that. Some of us are catching up, but thank you for bringing this conversation to the world. I'm happy to be a part of it.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And thank you for all of their listening, and hold shortly, and we'll be right back with our next session. Thank you.